Well, sometimes in the course of a project, it's necessary to take one element and you just can't find a component ready-made out there that works for you. You have to create your own custom object. And what I have in my project here, I have this kind of serving area that I laid out, but I really just blocked it in. I mean, literally, these are kind of extruded boxes because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with it yet. And I didn't want to slow down the design process. But now the time has come to really change what this design is. Now I absolutely could double click on the component and make sure that the rest of the model is hidden. But what I like to do is actually work on this in its own separate component outside of the model. It just makes it a lot easier to see all the parts of it. Also, as you'll see when we go to put together design drawings, it also makes it easier. So the way to do this is you right click on the component that is in question that you want to edit somewhere, and you can choose Save As. And this allows you to save the object outside of your project. And I'm just going to put it here on my desktop. And then you can open that right up. And here it is all alone in my project. Now, another thing before we get started here, a thing that you can do to make your workspace a little more efficient, especially now that you have become more familiar with these tools and toolbars, is you can go and enter the full screen mode. It's down here at the bottom of the view menu. And it just, again, it gives you a little bit of extra space. I can still access these menus up at the top of my screen, the pull-down menus, but I don't need them really anymore now that I'm more familiar with the commands. So doing a custom countertop, obviously this is a design exercise. You'll need to think about the functionality of the space. And of course, the one thing that we have lost is any relationship to the existing conditions. So we're going to have to try to remember what was there. And I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to give myself a little space over here so that I can have a pass-through for the people working behind the counter. I'm going to add a kick space at the base of this desk here, service counter. So the way that you can do that, and again, there's many different ways to do it, but I like having it here on its own. I can offset the kick space. It's usually about 3 inches, and we'll push-pull it up. Let me just zoom in. If you have a surface selected already, by the way, and you go to push-pull, it will push-pull that surface. Anyway, I believe it's about 4 inches is the kick space. And I could absolutely have a countertop. Usually there's one part of the counter that's a little bit lower that is for handicap access. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this part of the counter and push-pull it down 6 inches. Now that's at 30 inches. But I'm going to raise this up about 6 inches so that this is more of a standing height, which is more typical. 40, even 48 inches is possible for a service counter where people are kind of walking up and standing for service. Other things that we can do, so now that I have kind of the general configuration set, I can draw in countertop. Now in this case of this section, I think I'm going to just have a small service area up here and drop the counter down a little lower. There's a couple ways that you can do that. I find that one of the easiest ways, and again, there's just so many ways to skin a cat, so to speak. That's an odd expression, isn't it? Well, anyway, no cats here. No cats were injured in the production of this video. I'm going to just draw the profile along the edge here and push-pull it down. And that way I can really think about what my countertop is going to look like. So first of all, I'm going to select this line. I'll use the Move command and tap Alt or Control on a PC. And I'll copy it down. And I'm going to go with a 30-inch countertop. But my service counter part is up at 42. So I want to move this down 12. And again, I'm just trying to demonstrate possible techniques for how you could do this. And what I think I'll do, I'm going to take this edge line and I'll copy it over about 5 inches. And that'll be the edge of my counter. And I can even copy the countertop here, although I think I'm just going to wing it and give myself a little profile for the top of the counter. Erase that. So you can see I'm starting to get a sense of what this guy might look like from the end. And now I can just push-pull this all the way down to the edge. Now, you usually have a little bit of an edge to your countertop, kind of a profile or edge detail. I think I'll add one of those in. I'll just draw some lines. And again, you can type in dimensions. In this case, I think I'm just going to eye it. Not sure yet what the material is, so maybe I'll be a little cagey. That's a little harsh. Maybe let's add a little bevel to it. There we go. Maybe I'll add one down at the bottom too. Make this thing extra fancy. Erase those little extra pieces. And now I can push-pull this puppy. Push-pull this puppy down to the end. Okay. Again, you always make reference to the end points when you reach the opposite end. Oh, except guess apparently I didn't do that. We need to push-pull this all the way down. Now you see how when I do that, when you push-pull from one surface all the way to the other end of that volume, it will in fact erase the volume. Okay, and this is a great way if you want to make a hole through something. So for example, this service counter here, I think I'm just going to have underneath it some open storage. I can come in here, if I draw a rectangle, or better yet, let's even just use offset. And I can, oh well, that's actually probably a little bit much. Let's have a shelf in the middle. There we go. Little bit of a shelf. Now, when we push-pull, if I push-pull and make reference to this opposite end, it will cut a hole right through it. But be aware, if you push-pull and make reference to that opposite end, you will cut a hole through it. So sometimes you don't want to do that. You really have to just be aware of what you're doing. And I'll add some little detail to this, pull the shelf in ever so slightly. I wanted to pull the shelf in ever so slightly on this side, but you see how it wouldn't do it. If it's not, you need to draw in whatever geometry is going to divide up the surface. And in this case, I just added in some lines, and now I can push-pull that. There are all sorts of other details that you could add. I could have rounded the corner and have an overhang here on this edge of my countertop. I could make this come out ever so slightly. And these little details, these are actually super nice if you are wanting to really get into the details of your project. I can add that same detail up here. Now, what if I wanted to copy this profile up to this countertop? Well, what I'd need to do is get to a point where I can copy the profile. And you need to draw in a line somewhere along the line. Somewhere along the line. That was an unintended pun. So that you can copy that profile. I'm just going to double click on it, select it, and here is where you can use the System Control-C and then go up to this upper profile and use Control-V. Now the trick is going to be getting it to the spot that you want. I'll just put it right there. So I can use push-pull, but click on the little tiny bevel. And as long as I can get to that end point way down in the distance, and again, I'm using my perspective view to help me out. Now I can erase that little piece. And there you go. You have a matching profile. I suppose I could do it on the opposite end too. And again, it's all about trying to get the detail level that you want in your project so that it really seems like a lived-in kind of space. Also, it's just kind of a challenge as a designer to really think through all of these different pieces. So that's some of the basic parts of this. There are other things that you could do. For example, if you wanted to have doors. Now, I would only recommend spending a lot of time on the back of this counter if you think you're going to see it in your project. So for example, the countertop, I'm definitely going to see, and in fact, I just realized I don't have a countertop here, so I should put one on there. You're definitely going to see that. You're going to see the service counter. The cabinets, maybe not so much. One quick way to do doors is draw in a door, and you could probably look online and find some doors. Now what I will do in this case, I'm going to double click on the door, and I'm going to make it a component. And we'll just call it door. Well, let's call it cabinet door, so I know what it is. And double click on this to edit it, but display the rest of the model. And you can pull it out a little bit, and we can even add a little bit of a profile as long as we're here. Just pull this in and this in a little bit. There you go. Beautiful. You know, I could even add in detail for my handle if I wanted to. Let's just put a little kind of knob on there. Beautiful knob. We can push-pull out the circle. We can try to push-pull out the circle. And in fact, you can even, with SketchUp objects, some objects, if you get their entity info, some objects can actually be changed kind of parametrically. So if I change this dimension of the radius, change that to 0.5 inches, you can actually make kind of a wedge shape. Not all objects can be changed in this manner, okay? And I can't change the number of segments. I can when I've first drawn the object. I can make a copy of this using my move copy command. And typically, the knobs are kind of together. You have pairs of doors that are two. So what I want to do is make this door mirrored. Well, one way to do that is, or really the only way to do that, is to right-click on it and choose Flip Along, Components Red. Now, how do I know that it's red? Well, usually what I do is I try every other option, and they're all wrong until I get the right one. In theory, it's the axis that is kind of along the I don't know, the meridian that you want to flip, but that never really makes a whole lot of sense. Now that I have these components, so now I'll take this and I'll make a copy. In this case, I'll use the move copy command, tap Alt on a Mac, Shift on or Control on PC. Now I don't know how many doors I need, so I'm just going to tap /5. Let's try /6. It looks pretty good. So there you go. We have the back of our project pretty easily created. Obviously, I can put doors or open cabinets in other places. One other fun thing that we can do, let me just close this menu, is we can put logo on this front desk. SketchUp has a cool tool called 3D text. And what this will allow you to do is, you guessed it, place text that is three-dimensional, that kind of sticks out from the wall. You can even change the font, but let's give it a name, Ralph's Greek Temple Coffee. You can give the text any custom thing. You can specify the dimension and how far out it's extruded and whether or not the extrusion is full. So let's change the font. Regular is fine, but let's make it a little taller, 14 inches. And now click place. And what you'll see is, lo and behold, our text shows up as a three-dimensional object. And these are objects which can be scaled, they can be stretched and rotated and painted, and you can fiddle around with them afterwards. The only thing that you can't do is change the text once it's entered. So if you've made a spelling error or something like that, or you just choose a different name for your project, then you are basically in trouble. So that's 3D text. Now, one last thing that we can do in our custom countertops is we can apply materials. Normally, I would just go to the Happy Dappy materials library and try to find a material that I like. But let's learn how to make a custom material. Here I am using my internet search engine. I'm sure you've all heard of the internet. And I usually use Google for many things, but for image searches, I use Bing. The Bing search window is structured slightly differently so that when you see an image that you like, you can just click on it and it opens in a new window. So you can use any engine you want. When I search for images that I want to use for materials in SketchUp, there's a couple of key words that you want to use. The biggest one is seamless. You want to use the seamless textures because what that will force the search engine to do is look for images where the left side matches the right side and the bottom side matches the top side. So that way when you apply the material, it looks like it kind of goes on forever. There's not this kind of tiling effect. The other thing is the word texture. A lot of rendering software uses the terminology texture rather than material. The other thing that you can do is you can filter your results. I'll just click the filter button and you can tell it use a large image size, and mine shows me the image size up here. Those image sizes, they're not in inches, you may notice, but they're actually in pixels. So when you filter for pixel-based image size, you can tell obviously a bigger number is better. And I've already filtered it to be large. So basically like this 850 by 850, that's probably about as small as we'd want to go. But I'm going to choose this larger image size. I'll just click on it and it gives me a little preview, and you can scroll through the results if you want a larger view. In Bing, if you click on it, it opens it up in a new tab. This appears to be just fine to me. So I'm going to save the image just by right-clicking on it. I'll save it onto my desktop. Now, here I am in my model, and let's import that image. Just go to the File, pull-down menu, and choose Import. One thing to be aware of, SketchUp is very cognizant of file format, so make sure you're searching for JPEG images. Here's my image file. There are also several different ways you can use it. I can use it as an image. Let me just import it and use it as an image. And what you'll see is it basically comes in and you can place it on the floor, but it's its own object. I can't paint using that color. That's fine for something like a carpet. To use it as a paint material, you're going to have to check the option to use as a texture. So let's go back to the import menu, and I'll check the use as texture option. Click import. Now, when you place it over it has to be placed over some surface. See how it gives me the you can't put it there option. I'll place it on my countertop, and then it allows you to immediately choose the scale. You'll just want to think about, all right, how big are those planks? In this case, I'm using wood planks. And it will march the material out over your entire surface. How fun is that? Oh, that's really fun. But it's also great because now you can use it as a paint. I'm going to go here. Well, if I just click the home button, you'll see that this paint is available as an option in my used paint button. I can also, if I hold down the command key or alt on a Mac, I can use an eyedropper to suck up the delicious paint color, and then that will make it the current paint, and I can paint it anywhere I want. So we can do this for any number of custom materials. Obviously, little subtleties like maybe the material doesn't go up here. You'll want to fix that. Now, what if you don't like the positioning of the material once it's in? This texture maybe is, I don't know, at an angle or something like that. Or you just decide you don't like the scale entirely. You can right-click on the texture in question, and there is an option for you to edit the position of the texture. So just choose Texture, Position. And what you'll see is a couple of pins. You can drag it to rotate the texture. Just click on it, don't click and drag. Same with this one, drag pin to distort texture, lift to release, and drag pin to scale or shear texture. And again, most textures like this one, they're architectural. You're not going to want to fiddle around with it too much. But let's say I don't like the way the texture starts. I can drag it up until I get a nice joint at the bottom. I can also rotate it. So let's say I decide, I want this thing to be 90 degrees instead of horizontal. The shearing and rotating these, you're probably not going to use unless you have searched for a non-seamless texture. This would allow you, if you had flooring in perspective or something, this would allow you to kind of fix it. And you can get back to kind of square one by clicking and dragging. And then there's this shear option if you want to spread it out a little bit, get a little wider board. Again, SketchUp gives you a lot of options for modifying materials. And there you go. And that material will be the same everywhere in the that you use it. However, notice how it's different in the front and the side. Each instance of the material is unique. So I'm not going to continue and finish every little corner of this piece that would make my video hours long, but you would want to finish painting the entire object, push-pulling, follow me, whatever it is that will take you to get all of your countertops, cabinets, signage, materials, all that kind of stuff. Now, to prepare it to be reinserted in the model, you really don't need to do anything other than save it. I'm going to do Command S or Control S on a PC to save. What I would like to do, though, is prepare it for putting together our set of drawings. And to do that, you'll want to save a couple of scenes of this project, of this object, in order to be more easily inserted onto a sheet of drawings. We've learned this before. You go to the window pull-down menu, you call up your scenes menu. I usually have the styles menu open at the same time, and I'm pretty much done drawing, so I'm going to leave them both open at the same time just for convenience. And what I'm going to do, let's choose to save this overview here. This is a fast drawing mode, and so it's easiest for when you want to make modifications. Click Add. Okay, and we'll just call it Overview. This is handy if I want to come back and do something. But like we learned before, there are other types of styles out there. So for example, let's go with some of these sketchy edges one. And I'm going to display them. Right now they're displaying as a list. I'm going to display them as large thumbnails so you can really see what they look like. You can see there are a number of different kinds of views. These are all kind of sketchy looking. And of course, remember, we are using SketchUp, so having things look sketchy is kind of the goal. Each of these slightly different look, as you can see, so you'll want to choose one that kind of makes your project look nice. I'm going to save this. You can see it's turned off the axes and other things. And I'm going to save an overview here, but this one, I'm going to call it Sketchy. I also would like to save a plan view and an elevation of the two front sides. I think I'd also like to put a scale figure in here. I totally forgot to do that. So in my 3D warehouse, obviously what you type makes a big difference. I'm going to type in person, and you get, oh, hey, that's the person who's in my model already. You can use these people, of course, download them right into your model. And I've placed that person here and also a silhouette person. Move him over. And if you type in silhouette and person, you'll end up with a bunch of people like that. A lot of them do what's called face the camera. You see how as I move the camera, they always look at the camera. And that's actually a nice feature for scale figures. One thing you'll notice, though, is that here I am in my overview. If I go to the sketchy view, you see how the scale figure that was the silhouette, it basically doesn't show up in this particular view. It's just how the system processes that view. It's probably so like a cooking show, I'm not going to show you every step between here and there because we've already learned this in a previous video, how to set up orthographic views and perspective views. And just as a reminder, obviously the sketchy views are fine as saved ones, but if you want something like an elevation, I'll just click on this elevation. As a reminder, we're going to have a different style for these orthographic views. I use a style here called for board. And as a reminder, again, I'm going to set up the view types, the view properties here, style properties, to show a number of features that I happen to like. For example, endpoints. I think it just looks nice on a design board. And there are other things you can do. You can display front or back color. What I use is a face style, which is just black and white. And it still looks good, but it doesn't distract with all the colors. You can have sky or ground, and you can also control the thickness of things like the section cut. I did set up a section view looking left, and you can see here that I use a different style for that one that has section fill checked, and I've chosen a color which I think looks nice. And you can crank up the section cut line also. There are a few other little tweaky things you can do to your view to create some interesting effects. One that I happen to like is this dashed line feature, which is relatively new to SketchUp. And the way that you achieve that, you go to your Layers menu, and you can create a new layer. And again, creating a new layer is just a matter of clicking the plus sign. And you can call it whatever you want, Dotty, doesn't really matter. But now there are different line types available. So all you have to do is choose the line type. Any object which is placed on that layer will have that property to it. So that's a quick way to have line types in your project. Another fun thing that you can do is in a view where, let's say you want to show the back edges of a project. You can do that just under the View pull-down menu. Under Edge Style, you can show the back edges. I'll just turn it off, and you can see they disappear. So once you have all these scenes saved, don't forget to save your component model, and then you'll want to go back into your main model where you have the proxy object that you set up. So once you have all your different views saved, by all means hit save for your component and then go back to the main model. By the way, on a Mac, you can go to your window pull-down menu and you can have several models open at the same time. On a PC, you have to open a new instance of SketchUp every single time that you want to have a new model. You can have many instances open at the same time, but it does kind of muck things up a little bit, it slows things down. Here's my kind of proxy object. Proxy object is an object which is in place to represent another object, and typically a much more complicated object. And as you're populating your model, you may find that it starts to slow down when you have certain types of objects like plants in there. So people will sometimes use proxy objects, just basic simple shapes. And then when they're ready to put together their drawings, they'll replace those objects with the proxy object with real objects. The way you do that, right-click on the object and you choose Reload. And then you just browse for your counter, which is right here, and open. Now, again, depending on the complexity of your counter, this may really slow down your model or not. And there you have it, a view to the back of your model with the lovely desk in place. So the goal here is to set up your custom component as a proxy object in the main model, work on the custom component all on its lonesome, and then eventually save it with a bunch of different views, which we'll put on our board layouts, and also to reload it back into the main model.